I'm now a consultant with Barrick, but I'm still doing a lot of work with Barrick. I'll be talking about things associated with Barrick, but also with other mining companies as well. Just to clarify as well, although I've been working with mining companies and Barrick in particular over the last 4 or 5 years, I come at this from a utility engineering perspective. So I am more of a power developer than I am a mining person. So that's part of my perspective. Now, renewable energy has been talked about quite a bit. And the mining companies have been looking, and even at Barrick, we have, as part of our development process, ingrained in the mine development process, is a requirement to examine renewable energy, to see if renewable energy fits into the planning process for the mine. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. In the 4 years at Barrick, I've been involved in evaluating and looking at the energy solutions for mines in different parts of the world. And in Alaska, wind energy was identified as an option. In Pakistan, wind and oil-fired generation was a solution. And as I see it, in terms of the evaluations I've done, the changes in the renewable energy technology are so much faster than the mining developments can move ahead. So that's one of the challenges. My presentation outline here is briefly talk about Barrick Gold's global operations, really just to show the wide range of jurisdictions we're involved in, our use of renewable energy, existing and under evaluation for the future, some key factors to consider, which have been talked about a lot at this conference, financial and non-financial considerations, then transmission line access partnerships, and I'll have a brief case study of our Punta Colorado substation, and just to outline some of the other opportunities for potential collaboration. And then I'd like to talk just an example of some pump storage opportunities as one of the possible solutions for storing renewable energy, and the closed mines have some potential for that. And then I'd like to close with a bit of emerging technology. Quickly, as you can see, although we are active in Australia, most of our mines are located in North America and South America, and we have both operating mines and mines under long-term development. I have to say, when Barrick first started looking at renewable energy, the primary focus was sustainable development and to get the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Costs have changed, and as has been talked about here, with lower grade ores, the electrical energy input required to produce ore, or to process ore, is increasing all the time, and it will increase in the future. So we are now looking at renewable energy also from a cost savings point of view, potential reduced transportation of diesel, which that in itself can have an environmental risk of spillage, reduced exposure to oil price volatility, and of course, reportable greenhouse gas reduction. We report our greenhouse gases each year, and we track that very closely. And in some cases, particularly in Africa, renewables can definitely be more reliable than the grid power from the national grids. Under evaluation for the future, we have the expansion of the Punta Colorado wind farm. I'll talk more about the wind farm in a few minutes. We're looking in another tropical jurisdiction for Jatropha for biodiesel and char. Geothermal opportunities here in Chile and in Argentina. Obviously PV solar in Chile and in Argentina. Solar thermal for processing. As I mentioned, the use of our legacy closed mines potentially for pump storage or maybe for redevelopment. Small scale hydro generation. pressure recovery and water supply pipelines, and regenerative braking from downhill conveyors. These are all different things that we've included in our evaluation process, and our future projects have several of these built into them. The Punta Colorado wind farm, which is our biggest renewable development to date, the substation was built there to supply the energy off the SIC grid to the Pascalama project. The wind farm and the diesel genset that went with that was really intended to provide the construction and ramp-up power at the early stages of the Pascalama project. Originally, it was 10 2-megawatt wind turbines, and we have permits for 8 more. We have a 17-megawatt high-efficiency heavy fuel oil-fired generator, and we have a permit for 1 more. So we built the optionality even into that small facility. We have access to the SIC grid. We actually built the substation in the middle of the truncal system so we have access to the truncal system for our additional line that was built up to the Pascalama project. So right now, all of the power from that project is surplus, and we're selling that to the spot market. When we developed this project and made the decision to go ahead with the wind farm, solar was discounted. It didn't appear to be on the horizon. The costs were too high, and wind looked more attractive. As you can see, the Punta Colorado system is right in the middle of the northern SIC region, which we've talked about a lot at this summit. Again, once the 500 kV strengthening happens, it will be in a much better position than it is right now today. So this is the picture of the Punta Colorado wind farm. I think it's been well received. I was spent last week up there, and we had all 10 wind turbines operational. But again, this is really a solar-driven wind farm. It's as the solar radiation comes up during the day and the cloud clears, that's when the wind starts to blow on this site. So it tends to be very coincident with the solar development in the area. We have another wind turbine at Valadero in Argentina. It's unique. It's a 2-megawatt machine, but it was installed at 4,000 meters, so it's still one of the highest altitude wind turbines in the world. And quickly, and this has been talked about quite a bit so far in this conference, the life of mine considerations. Obviously, the mines have a fixed life. The electrical demand is 24/7, and any lack in reliability affects profitability for the mine. And that's whether it's reliability because of failures on the line or the supply, or because of the intermittent nature of the supply. So as was said in the last panel discussion, looking at developing a major processing facility on intermittent energy sources just isn't feasible. And I think besides the finite life of the mine of 10 to 30 years, the development phase of mines, it's 5 to 10 years. So there's a real mismatch with the IPP industry, independent power producers, who like to get on the ground and get up and running very quickly. So it's very hard for an IPP to have the staying power to cooperate in a mine development program. We've talked about the variability of renewable energy, and I think the other thing is there is seasonal variations as well that has been talked about too much here, location, and of course storage economics. Then there's also the financial and non-financial factors. Matching the renewable project life to the mine life, that's been talked about. The other thing to realize, so energy technology, particularly storage and renewable energy technology, it's evolving very rapidly, and it's very hard to predict where the technology will be 5, 10 years from now. Then if you look at operating mines that might have a very short fixed life, it's very hard to match up an IPP to that. Renewable energy credits, when the Punta Colorado wind farm was built, it looked like the non-conventional renewable energy credits were going to be a significant cash flow. Now, the value of those credits is going very low in Chile, and it really can't be part of the hard evaluation. Then you look at the savings dependent on oil prices. Obviously, this is a temporary drop in the oil price, but there's various opinions about how quickly it's going to go back up and how far it's going to go back up. And this is more applicable to, obviously, renewable energies provides a degree of project acceptability. In certain areas of the world, like Africa in particular, the grids are very unreliable, and that tends to drive the value of renewable energy higher. The mining economic cycle is something that's just can't be changed. It's inherent with the quality of the reserve or the resource, and it's a driving factor as well as commodity prices in the life of a mine. And it's got to be well understood, because if there's not an alternate customer, if there's no grid connection for the mine, then that's a real reality that any development has to consider. And we've talked about off-balance sheet financing. One of the things is of current concern is the nature of some take-or-pay contracts and whether that is actually going to show up on the mining companies' footnotes and starting to look as a long-term obligation, because that can affect their ability to borrow debt. So the transmission line access partnership, there's many existing or legacy mines that have operational or mothballed transmission lines that go out to the national grid. That's an opportunity. Many of these lines, as was talked about by our friend from Transelect, they were defined, particularly here in Chile, as special purpose or additional lines, and they weren't part of the regulated grid, but they had established connections with the regulated grid. Some of that is changing now because of the renewables. But these lines typically pass through remote areas that offer site-specific renewable opportunities for solar, wind, small hydro, geothermal. And in some cases, you'll have a mine with a developed and approved development permit that has the right to build a transmission line. So you may have a transmission line corridor permitted, and that's another opportunity to perhaps pre-build the renewable energy before the project goes ahead. So I believe this is a statement that there's significant opportunities to supply renewable energy to the grid or to an existing or a future mine if the mine transmission line is accessible to the renewable energy developers. So there's a degree of cooperation required, but it is an opportunity because of the remote locations and the possibility you're going to pass through good reserves. Now, the Punta Colorado substation, the case study, I'll go over this very quickly, but as I mentioned before, we built the Punta Colorado substation primarily to provide access to the SIC grid for the Pascalama project. We then added the 20 megawatts of wind and the reciprocating diesel engine as well. That's been sort of in development and underway in operational, but the planning horizon goes back 10 years. Now, just recently in this last year, we've been approached by renewable energy developers, and we're pleased to say that we now have an interconnect signed with Latin American Power for 186 megawatts of wind that will be inputted into Punta Colorado. And we have two other solar developers that are very close to signing access agreements for 88 megawatts and 47 megawatts. So here you have a situation where our primary reason for building the substation was to get access to the grid for the mine, and this has become basically a cluster of renewable energy around that access point. So we're very happy that we were able to facilitate that amount of renewable energy going into that point. The Pascalama transmission line going up to the project, there is considerable opportunity along there for more development, and we have been in early stage discussions with several developers. And this is a view of this part of the SING grid, and our transmission line that we have there was exactly as described by Transelect in the previous panel discussion from Crucio down to Nuevo Zeldavar. That line was built specifically as an additional line for the Zeldavar mine, and it will be going into the trunkalization process in the very near future, and primarily driven by the fact that renewable energy companies are connecting and changing the flows in that grid. In Peru, we have 2 other transmission lines that go through remote parts of the area. One of those lines that we've recently connected to a community and strengthened their power supply. And we have also been approached by small hydro developers that basically having our line there, which was intended to support only the mine, it provides an opportunity to introduce the renewable hydro into the Peruvian situation. And this is a slide here I made reference to before. I have to thank Northland Power. This is one of their slides, and this is a concept that they are proposing in Ontario to redevelop a closed mine site into a large pump storage system to help store renewable energy and retime it. We have also looked at approximately 10 legacy sites, mainly in western United States, and we've been into some discussions about the possibilities of additional mine conversions to pump storage there. One of the challenges with hydro pump storage is just getting the in-out efficiency. It's still around 80 to 83%, and of course that means that 20% of the renewable energy is lost as it goes in and out of the pump storage. And that's more or less my presentation. I would like to have this slide. There's a little video I want to play, and I really want to focus on the fact that the technology is emerging, and we need to think about where efficiencies on PV will go, how concentrating solar power will drop in cost, battery storage, and some of the other new technologies that are emerging. And looks like this video is not, it's still emerging. It hasn't been running, so. But again, this is just one more technology that's coming up, and it's being developed for remote opportunities. This is some of the slides here. Basically, the idea is to reduce the amount of oil consumption at remote communities or mining sites. And again, this is a very new technology, but it's based upon a drone-like tethered glider, which, as you see, will lift off automatically and will be tethered above the base station. And with the motion of the wind, it will then start generating a degree of power. The sizes that are being tested are in the 100 kilowatt range, but it just suggests that we don't know how many new technologies are going to emerge in this space over the next 10 years. As you can see, the idea of having such a small glider providing a little bit of power to a big mining site doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but these can be paired together, and certainly for smaller mines, this is one other opportunity to produce power. And the intent is this technology, after the mine has been dissipated or closed, this technology can be picked up and relocated to another spot. And I'm going to close my presentation with that, but I think that's probably The big thing to watch out for, there's a lot of changes happening in the industry, technology, fuel pricing, and of course here in Chile you have the massive changes in the marketplace and the needs to redevelop the transmission grid to support all the renewables coming in. Thank you very much.